Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the UTRCA's annual general meeting. As a reminder, Emily Chandler is serving as our meeting host. So if those of you online have connection problems or issues with technology, please contact Emily through the chat feature. And today's meeting will be live streamed on the UTRCA's YouTube channel. Please refrain from whispering or side conversation while the meeting is running, as they could get picked up by the microphones. Squares glow red, the microphones are muted, except this one. Do we have any regrets? No. Thank you. Okay. We'll read the territorial acknowledgement. We'll begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Adirondwan, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lenape peoples who have longstanding relationships to the land, water, and region of southwestern Ontario. The local First Nation communities of this area include Chippewa, the First Nations, Oneida Nations of the Thames, Munsee Delaware Nation, and Delaware Nation at Moravian Town. In the region, there are 11 First Nation communities and a growing Indigenous urban population. We value the significant historical and temporary contributions of local and regional First Nations of all the original people of Turtle Island. Are there any modifications to the agenda? Seeing none. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Just before we get going down the agenda, we will acknowledge a little bit different setup today with the AGM. Just make sure that you have your hand way out there so we can see it to make sure we don't miss anybody. And then we'll make sure that this room will get quite filled up this afternoon. So it's a good day. We'll be able to do give some good awards out. So now we'll move on to, we don't have any presentations or delegations, so we'll move to administrative business and approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, January 30th, 2024. Was the remover George and Dottie is second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I don't believe there's any business rising from the minutes or correspondence. So we'll go to reports for consideration. And the first one is the actual certificate. This is something that is provided annually and identifies that the bills have been paid, which is very good. Fun fact that this used to be done at one time at every meeting. So this is a much more efficient way of doing this. So would you like to add anything to that, Tracy?
No, that's all.
Excellent. Is there a mover for the motion to accept the fashion? Peter and then Sandy, the seconder. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And we'll move on to 6.2, 2024 municipal apportionment methods. Tracy, would you like to?
Chair, just a few comments. As outlined in the report, the budget consideration is undertaken in two parts now. Certainly with some of the changes we've seen in regulation over the past few years, this new piece of the legislation came into effect in July of 2023. So both our budget considerations are weighted votes, but they're to approve the methods that we use to apportion our municipal contributions to our member municipalities. And looking back, I think I even noted in the report here, but looking back over the last 10 years of printed budget packages, we've always applied these same methods. And had our budget sheet with the allocation methods, whether it be for modified current value assessment municipalities, for category 1 programs, modified current value assessment for our cost apportioning agreements where we have agreements signed, and then benefit-based apportionment methods for our dams and water control structures. So Certainly a few different methods that are used. And I think the due process, again, just provides that additional level of transparency as we go through our processes. So with that, if any other comments?
Yeah, so this is to do with regulation 402 2022 and our administrative bylaw. So the voting of the non-matching levy is by a weighted vote. So make sure that we are in compliance with that. It will be a weighted vote on this, the same as the budget. Are there any questions of the report? Seeing done, is there a mover and a seconder for the recommendations? Skylar and Debbie? Discussion? None, I'll turn it over to Michelle for the weighted vote, please.
Anna Hopkins for the City of London.
Here.
Yes, sorry.
One go with the hardest. Peter Cuddy for City of London.
Here,
Yes.
here, yes.
Don't follow me.
Okay. I'm telling you.
Skylar Frank for the City of London.
Yeah, it's there.
Sandy Levin for the City of London.
Yes.
Brian Petrie for the County of Oxford.
Yes.
Paul Mitchell for the County of Oxford.
Yes.
George Way for the County of Oxford.
Yes.
Rick Schadenberg for the County of Oxford.
Yes.
Scott Zaire for the County of Oxford.
Yes.
Harj Najjar for City of Stratford.
Yes.
Heeman is currently absent for Godolph and Thames Center. Debbie Heffernan for the Municipality of Middlesex Center.
Yes.
Dean Trentowski for the Municipality of West Perth.
Yes.
Hugh McDermott for the Township of Perth East.
No.
Jim Craigmile for the Town of St. Mary's.
No.
Jim Craigmile for the Township of Perth South.
No.
And Jim Craigmile for the Municipality of South Huron.
No.
That carries. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to 6.3, 2024 final draft budget consideration. Over to Tracy for comment.
Sure, I'll ask Emily to pull up the presentation in that time. Certainly, staff have done a lot of work. And commend the managers and teachers, for pulling this draft budget together. Again, it's a reminder, this is a really different budget process than we've had in the past. So it's been a lot of extra work. I think I'll just hold this. What I'm providing today is the same presentation that I've given to municipalities. I think this really tells the story of our budget process, the changes that have happened and have impacted our budgeting process. And again, provides that a little bit more context than just a number page. So with that, just highlighting a few of the things that we've discussed at our municipalities. It's a little bit more general for the purposes of today, but recognizing that what we do is really on a watershed basis. Next slide, please. With our programs and services, we've always tried to reflect our organization's long-standing goal to bring as much value and environmental programming into our watershed as possible. We leverage our municipal contributions and investments to enter into partnerships. We provide excellent return on investment for our municipalities and deliver programs and services that benefit the entire watershed. So again, that watershed approach, despite changes to the Conservation Authorities Act, we still go back to our beginnings and function in this manner. So with this overview today, highlight a few of the budget drivers, the impacts to our 2024 budget through legislative changes, our historical context, and our current operating environment, which many of our municipalities are in the same situation. And highlight some of the capital projects as well. and those drivers today. Our schedule as well, sorry, next slide, please. Our schedule today is very much, we've been living it and seeing it. Presentation in August of our concepts for our budget, drafting the budget in October, circulating that budget afterwards, and having consultation through February. Consideration of comments that were received in January, and then today, where we have our budget consideration. The next slide. This was a graphic that was provided in the overview, really highlighting where those drivers are and reasons for the changes in our budget. And again, based on those legislative changes, our historical operating environment, and our current operating environment. So I'll go on through the next few slides and explain some of these drivers in more specific detail. So with legislative changes, there's been a lot. There's been no additional provincial funding to offset the costs of additional work. And we're continuing to do this work through 2024 to meet the timelines. There's requirements under our mandatory programs and services regulation to have an operation asset management plans for water and erosion control infrastructures. In the Upper Thames, we have significant water and erosion control structures. We have to complete an ice management plan, to complete our land management strategy that also involves public consultation, complete our lands inventory, and also have lands acquisition and disposition strategies and policies in place. As well, our watershed-based resource management strategy, again, requiring public consultation and significant effort to pull all of that together. Next slide, please. We're also dealing with the more homes built faster and more homes for everyone. Now to get her done. Oh, sorry, the rain, I guess it's hard to hear, so. Certainly with these changes, again, to other pieces of legislation that affect us, service delivery timelines to meet those planning applications are really needing to be expedited. So we have to also ensure that where development is proposed, it's also in areas that are appropriate for development. So in order to identify where those hazard areas are, we need updated hazard mapping, not only for floodplains, but also erosion hazards. As well, we have updated section 28 of the Conservation Authorities Act. We were anticipating this. It was released the Friday before the long weekend for Family Day. And again, there's going to be some requirements to get that in place in a very short timeline. So in total, having this extended work and additional requirements, it looks to be about $1.5 million in impact to our budget in order to undertake this work and then maintain and continue to monitor and update these requirements. Next slide, please. In our operating environment, inflation is no surprise to anyone. We've all been going through this. Staff retention and compensation. We had a compensation review undertaken in 2022 and implemented partway through the year using deferred revenues in 2023, but in 2024, we're seeing that full implementation. We've had a fees freeze on development. I'm going to always have a hard time saying that for development reviews. We're typically, when we are experiencing more growth, we're able to collect those fees. Again, recognizing inflation and cost of living changes to really reflect what growth should be paying for growth, but we're not able to claim additional fees in those planning and development applications and Section 28 permitting requirements. Increased growth demands. And again, not just related to our involvement in planning and permitting, but also with our lands. Certainly the slide, the photo, you can see that around our lands, not only here at Fanshawe, but at Pittock, growth is surrounding our properties. We're seeing additional impacts with needing access requirements, having infrastructure easements, as well as encroachment, and also dealing with the unhoused. Those are all additional stressors that we've seen because of growth, and also people who are now living in these areas, recognizing our lands and places to explore nature. So seeing additional usage as well. As well, with any of our operating environments, we have capital costs that have been seeing significant increases. I'll explain a little bit more on a slide down below. But with our historical impacts, back in the mid-90s, we experienced severe reductions in our transfer payment from province. It was frozen with nothing increased. And then again, in 2019, we saw a 50% reduction. So currently, when looking at our flood and erosion control program, payment from the province covers less than 13% of those total program costs. We've always tried to keep our levy contributions low and depressed, so resulting in we're not having larger reserves than some municipalities would typically have, especially in areas where we have significant flood and erosion control infrastructure and operations and maintenance and management, and those costs are continually rising. As well as a reminder, we were unable to access the federal wage subsidies during the pandemic, so another impact to our reserves and depleting those areas. With our capital projects, we've seen significant increases there as well. Certainly nothing surprising with our municipalities, but there's certain municipalities that are seeing higher increases in this budget because of the infrastructure that are considered special benefiting for those areas. Areas like St. Mary's because of floodfall repairs, work on the Mitchell Dam, and also the West London Dike. I think everyone recognizes with aging infrastructure, there's more maintenance costs. We try to keep things in a state of good repair, but those costs are rising. And certainly had a few instances where our project proposals, just in the last couple of years, have doubled those forecasted costs. I think given the uniqueness of some of our infrastructure and the number of people able to do the work, it really puts us in a hard situation, finding others to at any reduction of costs. We've gone through the categorization of our programs and services. Having category 1 is mandatory, and where the province has deemed those as requirements and municipal levy is used without any agreements required. We have category 2 programs that are non-mandatory, where the CA municipality may request the CA to deliver a program or service on their behalf. We see that with the ESA program in London, but also many of our municipalities. We provide risk management services under the Source Protection Act as well. And then other programs and services where, again, we go back to that watershed approach, recognizing that all municipalities benefit, and for us to undertake programs and services that provide that greater watershed benefit and apply those where we have cost apportioning agreements in place. I can report that we have 99.8% of our apportionment areas that have agreements either finalizing, signing, or have been signed. With our draft budget, we certainly have a number of our funding sources shown on the pies. These pies are shown proportionally. So of course, most of our work is done in that category 1 program area. The navy blue on the slide shows where we are using municipal levy, but then those other areas where we've either self-generated revenue being a huge component, having municipal contracts, we're going after some provincial and federal grants and contracts, all things that we undertake to assist our municipalities. And then the very small amounts for the provincial transfer payment to the Conservation Authorities Act and under the Clean Water Act. Our category 2 agreements, much smaller dot on the screen there, but those are cost recovery and completely funded through those municipal contracts. Our category 3 programs and services that we have, and you're looking at the piece of the pie, a very small in the darker blue shade there is through municipal contracts, whereas we're going out and getting either using self-generated revenue or other grants programs to offset those costs. And then our other category 3 programs and services are campground operations, where they are entirely funded on their own. And with that, although they're funded through the self-generated revenue, we also use funds and distribute our overhead costs to the campgrounds. So we're also offsetting those costs to our category 1 programs. With our municipal contributions overall, we've shown the general distribution levy, just over 7 million. We have around 600,000 in cost apportionment agreements with a total municipal contribution of almost $8 million. Of our total operating budget, that municipal contribution is about 35%. Some final key messages that I'd add. Certainly the impacts that we've seen to our operating budget 2024 is tied to those legislative changes and those activities that have to be completed by the end of 2024. No additional funding has been provided to offset those costs. We've had increased budget pressures tied to rising operation and capital costs. Again, with that aging flood and erosion controlled infrastructure, continued maintenance costs are also significantly higher. And we're always trying to mitigate the impact on the municipal levy by applying program revenues to offset those mandatory programs and services. So you see that as well when you see those by distributions. So with that, certainly we're able to answer any questions, not only myself, management team, and Christina here, and I know Brian attended many of the presentations I gave to councils. For the most part, councils seem to understand. They understand that, this is a challenging budget year. And these are programs that are mandatory to provide.
Thank you, Tracy. Yes, I will just reiterate, I was able to, not all of them, certainly, but a good number of them. And Tracy did an amazing job. It was expanded presentation such as this that really lays out the challenges that we're facing within the for the authorities and our municipal partners. And certainly we did hear feedback from those councils, and I was able to sit down with the Mayor of London as well. We understand the challenges that municipalities are going through and the want to work together. What I want to emphasize is that most of these issues that you can see are being traced back to a common source, and that is inadequate funding and over-regulation from our provincial partners. So they're taking away revenue sources and making more work, which it may be work that needs to be done, but it's taking the control away from the authorities and the municipalities to come to agreement on that. So there was a willingness certainly out there to work together to try to address some of these issues. And I certainly made that commitment for myself to be open, and I think the board would probably feel the same way. It is certainly a challenging year. This year, we will have to deal with next year as well. There's certainly some challenges in this budget that haven't been addressed. There is still a deficit. Our reserves are not there, but so we'll have further conversations and stuff. We can look at what that looks like going forward, but certainly we have to deal with this year. So with that, I will open up the floor to questions, and we'll have discussion once we have a motion on the floor. Are there any questions? Hugh, please.
Could you refresh my memory why we didn't get the Canadian COVID funds?
Through the chair, we were considered, conservation authorities as a whole were considered not eligible for that program. Municipalities were, or there was a stipulation that conservation authorities were not eligible in a very specific thing. So
Just particularly because of our structure, or just because of the service we provide?
I don't know if it was spelled out. I'm looking at Grant to see if he had some specific knowledge in the details of the SERB program, why conservation authorities were not eligible.
Excuse me, I don't think that's been fully adjudicated yet. I think that's yet to come.
Yeah, there certainly is, what Grant's referring to, it has not been adjudicated yet. It is a legal case that some CAs are participating in, but we haven't heard the outcome of that.
So they never ever really gave you the reason?
Right.
Okay.
Further questions? So we'll take our time with this one, just because this is a big one, and it's going to set the scene for the next year, and it's certainly something that we haven't had in the past. This is the first major budget change, and that was learned as we did the presentations as well. It is a learning experience and how you explain these type of changes, and so we did see some when it came to the Category 3 agreements. South Huron has decided not to. They passed a resolution not to join. First South had originally, but then with further information was provided, they decided to sign that agreement. So that was a good news story. both for the authority and for the residents that use those programs. So it will be easier going forward in future budget years to be able to provide that type of information that's required. But it's certainly, Tracy did a wonderful job as did staff, but it's just one of those, it's a learning curve on something that's brand new. And so it's hard to always get every bit of information that's needed. So if there's no further questions, what I will say is that, again, this is under the same regulation and our administrative bylaws. Of course, this will be a weighted vote. And so we will have that take place. But I will be looking for a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Skylar and Debbie. Is there discussion on that motion? Being done. The only thing I will say is that this is a tough budget, but we do have a fiduciary responsibility to the authority. It may be tough for our member resident or member municipalities, but we always have to think about what hat we're wearing at this table and at the table that you're at and what that means. I certainly will be supporting the budget. It's certainly not something that I think it could have been done differently from the standpoint of regulations that came down, but really scrutinizing the budget. Staff have done a wonderful job trying to figure out those regulations and how they will affect us. And certainly that will come through. I think the deficit, as in more normal years, UTRCA, as the staff do their job that they do every year of finding grants and opportunities, we'll see that deficit fall. But right now there's a lot of things that are unknown in this business as far as when grants are announced and that work that happens. So hopefully we can bring that down, and we usually do see that happen throughout the year in our budget. So it is starting at $929,000, but I think there's room for improvement, and we've already seen some of that in future reports that are coming before us just shortly. So one of the great things that I have learned through this process is that we're conservation authorities are different. Every single one of them. You know, we have large urban centers such as London, Stratford, Oxford County, you know, Woodstock, Ingersoll. A lot of other smaller authorities do not do that. They don't have that. So it's a much more different model that they face. They don't have the infrastructure that we have. So there's different challenges, and it goes the other way as well. We cannot compare ourselves to, say, something like the Toronto Conservation Authority. That is a different beast all on its own. So we really have to take it a case by case basis and certainly look at our, and I think that's what staff have done. And so those were some of the questions I received, is why are some going up and others not? And really it's because their business model is just different. We are seeing a lot of pressures, and I think this budget addresses those from our partner municipalities, specifically London, where we're seeing the urban growth. We're trying to address those planning timelines, and we certainly thank them for their ability to work with us with funding for that. And so I think we're responding to that, but it comes at a cost. I think we'll see later, there is some advocacy work that I think we should be doing to try to, those came out of conversations with Mayor Morgan and other councils, that we do have a role to play to try to step up and show where we can maybe get some work done so we can have increased revenue sources and try to offset what we're asking through our municipalities. But at this point, as you can see, 35% is being asked from municipalities. Should it all be there? No, but it's outside. I believe it's outside of our control to control that at this point. We're giving mandates to meet. Staff have a lot of work to do this year. And so we'll be very busy for them. But at the end of the day, this is what I think it's going to take to do it. And I will be in support of what we have here today. Further discussion? Yeah, please.
Thank you, through the chair. And I agree with everything that the executive has said to us from your table. It's a very trying year. However, those additional staff that we're going to have, and then what'll happen in 2 years, be it full time, and potentially different costs really concern me. And not only that, I'm a full supporter of the asset management plan, and I'm really concerned about what that number is going to tell us moving forward. And I am concerned about the 900,000 coming out of reserves and what's happening to the reserves. And in the back of my mind, I can't help but think we're going to be sitting in a year from now with a similar sort of target percent increase. And that's very concerning because it's just not attainable to keep on moving in that direction. So for that reason alone, and I understand all the pressures of how the government has downloaded and increased their, and I appreciate all that and the extra work and staff, but I just don't think I'll be able to support the budget based upon what's going on now and what I see in the future. And I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Andy, please.
Thanks, through the chair. My recollection was we discussed at least part of Jim's concerns at an earlier meeting about the additional staff that we need to meet the obligations we have for the end of the year. And at least some of those positions, like asset management, is probably an ongoing position. But my recollection was that the general manager said to us that there isn't a need for those staff. We're not keeping staff on just to keep staff on. Is that still the plan?
Through the chair, that is the plan. You know, we did recognize that, especially through some of the communication efforts, it's been a contract position, right? Recognizing as we get through our education and outreach, not only with our strategies, but also with the hazard mapping and modeling program, that that's a position that we potentially would need in the future and ongoing. Again, I think whenever we've had retirements, we've looked at opportunities for how do we need this position in the future as well. So I think, again, that's just a common practice that we do. We look at what our needs are. We just don't keep positions for keeping positions.
You know, certainly I know that's, you know, what you're thinking now, and hopefully that gets reflected in next year's budget as well, because I know Jim will ask about it and I'll ask about it. The other point that I wanted to try and get at is our ask of the municipalities is only about 35% of the budget. Are we still on the low side compared to our other conservation authorities, particularly those that are kind of in our peer group?
Yes, thank you for the question. Through the chair, yes, we are at the low side of what we request for our levy contributions. You know, there is certainly a range. Again, as Brian mentioned, there's different CAs depending on their present size, what their pressures are. For an example, Rideau Valley has similar pressures to us, City of Ottawa, and they're supported 80% through levy. So just 80. So again, there's a range. Each CA is a little bit different, but yeah, we are certainly at the lower end.
Yeah, and we'll certainly see, this is, as a board, this is not the end of our work to bring these things in. We are gonna have an asset management plan coming forward. We're gonna have a revenue or a reserves policy looked at, because there's been a history of underfunding the authority for the sake of saving our member municipalities' funds, which is good in one way, but there's consequences to others. And right now, I assume from what I've seen from, you know, our municipal world, that we are probably severely underfunded for asset management, for the type of structures and the type of assets that we have. But that's to be seen. And so we'll have to deal with this budget, and maybe there might be some savings that don't, like, there's some costs that won't carry on, but there's some decisions that have to be made in the future on this as well. So I agree with you, Jim. There's definitely some issues that are going to be faced in the future, because we know there's some challenges ahead that we've identified as a board, which is good, but they're real, and we'll have to we're gonna have to pay the bills at one time, and it's probably best to save in advance, or at least know what our challenges are ahead. Again, I will reiterate that some of these programs that they're asking for, the provincial government asking for, are good programs, and I think the asset management throughout the province that they've implemented has been a good idea. And we're seeing a lot of budget hits this year because of those requirements are required to come into full force this year. But there's certainly that lack of communication and collaboration on how this could be achieved has certainly driven those costs up because of the short time frame to do it. When we get a legislative change the Friday before a long weekend, and it has to be implemented on April 1st, Now staff have been thinking about this for a long time. We're supposed to have this last year. That does not leave, those drive up costs because you're left with not a time frame to be able to do things in a different way that may be more effective. So certainly some things to think about. This is not a happy budget. I don't think anybody's gonna be going out and going, yay, we're doing awesome stuff, and we're saving people money. This is something that we have to do, and I don't see another way to do it for our municipalities. I think the biggest message I can send to every board member is we need to educate our municipalities more on the services that we provide and have that collaborative talk. That's the way we're gonna get on a common message. I think there is a common message between municipalities and conservation authorities. We're seeing the pressures of having to provide services based off property taxes, and that's not the most sustainable method. I'm just gonna point to the recent announcement yesterday of $1 billion was pulled out of a back pocket for universities and colleges. Not saying that they didn't need it. What I'm saying is that what we do and what conservation do has a great impact on a lot more of our population. And so does what our municipalities do. And so there's gotta be an equal balance there. Provide that funding if you want something done. Certainly, they didn't want universities and stuff to be, and colleges to be collapsing. So they provide that funding to make sure that that was there. There's a lot of conservation authorities and municipalities that could be in the same boat because they do not have the funds to make sure if that structure out there needs work, we have to do it. So we make sure we have the funds for it. I think that our staff do an amazing job. Again, not 80%, 35%, because they go out and they get the grants. They get those wacky dollars and they save us 50% off the bat. That's an amazing value to our municipalities that they would have to pay. So it's certainly a challenge, Jim, and I don't disagree with you whatsoever. I just don't see another way, and I'm certainly open to suggestions on how we can do differently. I'm sure staff will. Mark, please.
I know you talked about asset management. Just curious about the other sort of side of it. That would be the land ownership studies, the sort of thing that you're trying to figure out. Maybe possibly somewhere down the line, there's lands that the UTRCA owns that could possibly be sold or redeveloped or have a change in focus on. That maybe there's an opportunity there at some point to replenish the reserves or just gain more dollars in the bank, so to speak.
Yes, if I can through the chair, that's exactly the thought process as well, going through our lands inventory, recognizing what lands we have, what their uses are, and then those acquisition and disposition policies. There is a requirement to notify the province of that we've completed the inventory. We don't have to provide the inventory to the province. But certainly our lands management strategy and our goals and objectives through that strategy will inform how we make decisions on our lands moving forward. The province can direct what revenue from land sales could be used for. But if we have a very strong strategy, and I think our goals outline how we would like to either reinvest, offset costs, or reinvest in other lands to further enhance and improve our systems, then that would be a benefit too. But we'll get there. That's part of the work that we'll be doing.
Should have met yesterday. It was a lot nicer weather. Any further discussion? Paul, please.
I agree with Jim. It's always concerning when you have.
We're gonna have to speak up. You have competition.
Okay. I agree with Jim that it's always concerning when you have a deficit budget, and when that number is over $900,000, it's very concerning. But in the budgets that I've seen in the last 5 years, I think the majority of them have been deficit budgets. And by the time the year is out, we've either been a smaller deficit or in a surplus situation, as we were with the budget that we passed last year. And I think part of the reason that we have deficit budgets is that the cautious nature of which the way these budgets are prepared, and that staff puts in what our costs are, And they're very conservative in what our revenues are gonna be. And the other part of it is that, the unusual funding model that conservation, authorities have compared to municipalities and even private business, in that we, at this point, know what a lot of our costs are gonna be. But over the next 12 months, much of our revenues depend on grant applications and unknown other revenues that will change the final outlook a year from now. So, yeah, I'm not happy with the $900,000 deficit, but I am going to support the budget because I think, given the way it was prepared, that the numbers a year from now will look a lot better.
Thank you.
I hope everybody heard me.
What I'll do is, there's certainly some questions about the deficit, so I will turn that over to staff to maybe they can share some of their plans and how they foresee that. I'm sure there's some work that, you know, if they don't receive the funding, it's not going to happen. Other stuff has to happen, so they, staff can certainly explain that better than I.
Thank you through the chair. Yeah, exactly what Paul was saying is we have had deficits in the past. And managed to turn those around. And nature of our formula is sometimes that we don't even have the grant applications in our hands yet, or we've just finished them. You know, the last couple of weeks, I'm looking at Teresa because I know she's been busy with a number of grant applications that we've put in. Again, we might not find out about those until the end of March. So yeah, we are a little cautious in identifying some of those in our budget right now, but we certainly have been very successful in the past of being able to get those grant dollars in and then offset those deficits moving forward. There is one challenge this year is that we find that the grant applications that are out there that benefit us the most are typically category 3 and not as much in category 1 programs. However, as I mentioned previously, when we do extend and build on our category 3 programs, we assign what we call allocations or overhead costs that are for our finance department, for HR, for fleet vehicles. So we charge back or recoup some of those allocated costs by providing those category 3 programs to offset some of those category 1 amounts. So outlined in the report too, we know that there are some works that we'll be doing. There are natural heritage benefits, there's plantings, but some of that's happening on our lands as well. So we'll be able to offset some of our own land management costs because of work that we're doing on our own lands in that category. Lots more to come, I'm sure, and you'll get updates as we receive grant applications, but there's certainly a very lengthy list of grant applications that we've had. There's been some that we haven't gotten too, so that's why we're always cautious. I don't know if Teresa wants to add a little bit more. Or...
I'm one of those cautious people that you're speaking about. Don't like to count the chickens. We do have obviously very large application went in through Brad's unit for precision conservation for stewardship programs. We are cautiously optimistic that we will see significant funding through that program. I just don't want to go much further because I worry that I have to come back next month and go, you know, because we really don't know sometimes which way they'll go for when we apply for these things. There are some pieces that I think is outlined in the budget memo that we have not been incorporated into the budget yet, the funding that we've received very recently. So things already look better. Not $900,000, but better.
Further discussion.
Through you, Mr. Chair, listening to the different members at the table with their comments and concerns, I share the same concern that this is a very high levy increase. To Mr. Craigwell's point about what do we do with the staff afterwards, I did bring that concern to discussion earlier in the summer. My suggestion was to show where the new staff are allocated within the organizational chart framework of the organization, so that we could see where the new staff are being inserted, and then in future, we can make a further analysis of, needs analysis of allocation of where the staff should go, disposition of the staff after the different mandated tasks are completed and up and running. And I think Sandy pointed that out as well. And to the chair's comment about property taxes alone cannot foot the bill, that's the inherent structural deficiency that this organization is facing. Mark suggested possible disposition of assets. That will be discussed, I think, once the staff comes back with their reporting on that aspect. But I guess my caution would be that that would be a temporary relief. It's kind of like dealing with the symptoms, like taking an aspirin for a headache. Kind of gets you over the pain, but it doesn't deal with the root cause of what our funding challenges are. So I guess my final comment would be to refer back to the previous chair in his parting remarks. You'll recall the parable about the donkey trapped in the well. And the poor donkey was being pelted with all sorts of debris and other things inside the well. But over time, the donkey found and discovered a way to get out of the well and free itself of its problems. So going back to Mr. Craigwell, to Jim's comments about having this discussion again in a year, well, we have a year to figure it out. And I encourage everybody to work together to find a way to achieve a similar end result as the donkey was able to discover. So I'll leave the comments there. Thank you.
You guys picked the wrong chair. Very well done. Further discussion? Last call. With that, I will ask that Michelle perform the way to vote, please.
Anna Hopkins for the City of London,
Yes.
Peter Cuddy for the City of London,
No,
Skylar Frank for the City of London,
Yes.
Sandy Levin for the City of London,
Yes.
Brian Petrie for the County of Oxford,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell for the County of Oxford,
Yes.
George Way for the County of Oxford,
yes,
Mark Schadenberg for the County of Oxford,
Yes.
Scott Zaire for the County of Oxford,
Yes.
Harj Najjar for the City of Stratford,
Yes.
Tom Heeman for the Township of Lucan Vidal is absent. Tom Heeman for the Municipality of Thames Center is absent. Debbie Heffernan for the Municipality of Middlesex Center,
Yes.
Dean Trentowski for the Municipality of West Perth,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott for the Township of Perth East,
no,
Jim Craigmile for the Town of St. Mary's,
No.
Jim Craigmile for the Township of Perth South,
No.
and Jim Craigmile for the Municipality of South Huron.
No.
I believe that's passed. Thank you, Ruby, for that, and staff will be happy to know that we can get to work. And lots of those grant applications. We will now move on to item 6.4, which is the water and erosion control infrastructure projects update. You don't, as we just talked about, we do offset a lot of funding through grant dollars. And so the good news is that 50% of these dollars will be have secured for past projects that can be completed prior to April. And then kudos to staff also for securing an additional $132,000 that will save our municipal partners on their side. So I will now turn it over to Tracy for a comment.
Yes, through the chair. Certainly WECI is one of those programs. Just highlight that it is the water and erosion control infrastructure project or program. There's 5 million allocated annually to all CAs throughout the province. And we've been quite successful in the past through staff at getting these grant dollars. It's not always guaranteed, and it goes by priority listing throughout the province, which projects are considered high priority. In this case, we've had a little bit of a case where someone else wasn't able to complete the project in time, so there were some additional funds that were able to be reallocated. So, if you have any questions, Chris Taft. And I see Dan behind there too. Dan, hi.
Questions of the report for staff? Paul, please.
Yes, question to Chris, and it's on about table 2 on page 49 of the agenda, which is the projects identified for next year's possible WECI applications. And the big ticket items on there are safety booms. 700,000 for Fanshawe Dam, Wildwood and Pittock at 80,000 each, and Thomas Ore Dam at 75,000 each. So 3-part question, Chris. What's a safety boom? What's it, how's it work? And why are they identified as high priorities for the consultants that we hired?
Sure, yeah, Mr. Chair, if I can respond to those 3 questions. I'll start with what a safety boom is. Currently, we have buoys in front of our structures which warn people of the hazards. We have signs up. The safety boom, like the buoy, is on the upstream side of the structure, but it's a series of buoys or booms that are connected together, and it provides more of a physical barrier for people who may wander into the dangerous area in the forebay, not knowing what the hazards are. So they need to be designed, anchored properly for the loading conditions, the velocities, the debris, ice loading, those sorts of things. In some cases, they are designed for debris, to stop the debris from compromising the spillway as well. In the case of Fanshawe, it's being designed as a safety boom. We're not as worried about the debris. Large gates, they're able to pass debris through, or it actually sinks under the water, basically. But they still have to be designed to be able to take the loading that the debris would place on them. So I think that answers the first part of the question. The next part was why they're high priority projects. We go through dam safety review. We went through that and finished that process in 2007. We're going through that again with Fanshawe, Wildwood, and Pittock being completed, and we're starting on the small and the medium-sized structures or on Mitchell. Through those dam safety reviews, one of the things that are identified as a high priority public safety risk factor are safety booms. You can see all sorts of evidence of others implementing those, putting those in their structures, whether it be conservation authorities, large dam owners like the OPG, Ontario Power Generation, or Ministry of Natural Resources. If we were faced with a project which needed to get approved through either the federal government or the provincial government, we would likely have to install them. So it's not only a risk management thing, but it's also one that we would be probably faced with at some point in the future. There's nobody there twisting our arms to do it now, other than the fact that it is a public safety risk. And one that common practice for most dam owners is to have those in place. But they are very, very expensive safety measures, but necessary. There was a third question, which you covered it. Did I cover it? Sorry.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Paul.
So to respond, thanks for the response and the information you sent me yesterday, Chris. I'm sure if any other board member wants that, they could get it from you. But what I hear is not only an asset management in that it protects our dams, but the huge part is it's a liability issue. Anytime when you talk safety, there's liability, and we know that people like to sue the Upper Thames, and if we do anything to avoid that. And, no, it's a significant dollar value to put these in. Appreciate the information.
No, I think this goes back to what Tracy was talking about as well in our budget pressures of what we're seeing is more people using the authorities' lands. So certainly there's more people out on the water. They may not know the dangers. And so there's a part of that for due diligence on our part to be able to make sure that we're providing a safe recreational opportunity, whether people are aware or not, to try to make sure that we certainly don't want people getting hurt. Don't think for 99% of people going over a dam would be a fun thing. Although some people try Niagara Falls, so you never know. It would probably be in best interest. So thank you for the question, Paul, and thank you very much for providing that staff ahead of time so they could have. Further questions? Seeing none, is there a mover for the recommendation? Anna and Mark. Trying to get around to everyone. The discussion. The only thing I do want to say is thank you to staff because staff are prepared and they're always identifying projects. They were really able to take advantage of the situation when there was extra funding come available, and so we'll benefit more as an authority than maybe others, and so will our member municipalities in the future. So having proactive staff make sure that that happens, and so that's always appreciated very much. Sandy.
Through the chair, just to get my head around it and maybe help others. In terms of projects like the one that Chris was just talking about, is the allocation of costs to the municipalities based on the same percentages that we see in the budget? So for Fanshawe Dam, it's 84% City of London and 15% roughly for St. Mary's. And that's the half that's municipal and the other half is WECI.
Yes, so the 84-15 was Wildwood, I believe that you were quoting there. Fanshawe's 100% City of London. So it's based on that benefiting municipality apportionment, the large structures that was established when they were constructed. Basically, there were agreements in place as to how the original construction would be funded, and that has continued forward. So 50% comes off of that, or whatever the 50% of the project cost, but comes off that, and then the percentage, the municipal apportionment is what's left over, the other 50%.
Thank you.
And you just imagine $350,000. Eventually, it sounds like we would have to do this anyway. If it came down, it could be 100% cost allocated to, in this case, the City of London. But if we can get those WECI dollars, then that would be able to save that amount, which is a good amount.
If I may, that's a very, very important comment, is that we may find ourselves in a position where we don't get WECI funding and the whole cost of that project. And we may be in a position where we don't have much choice to defer it and wait until the next year, or there might not be any better chance of getting it the next year. So yes, it's many times the whole cost could be borne by the municipalities.
Further discussion? None, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Then we'll go to 6.5, fee freeze advocacy. And certainly this came through conversations both with the Mayor of London and with their presentations. But I think this is something that all municipalities and being elected officials, the vast majority of us would say that this is something I think that can be success if it's successful. Would put those development charges in the right place for those who are benefiting from those, and allow us to offset those costs to municipalities. I'm always of the thought that if you can have an identified end user of something, then that's a perfect opportunity for a fee. So we're not passing that on to everyone. So I will ask Tracy to make some comments on that, and then we can have a discussion.
Yeah, thank you. as Brian mentioned, this was certainly a comment that came up through many of the council presentations, ones he attended and others as well. But I also wanted to provide a little bit more context because, as we've said a few times this morning, all CAs are experiencing different pressures. And certainly in our watershed, we're recognized as one of the high growth CAs, as you can see by the table in the report. And there's not many others in the Southwest that are identified as those high growth areas. And since 2021 and even 2022, the population projections and growth are really reflecting, it's not only London, but it's also Woodstock, Ingersoll in that main 401 corridor, as well as Stratford. So these areas are areas where there's going to need more housing, more development, and certainly our municipalities are familiar with this. They're experiencing these same pressures. But again, to provide that context, that as we're seeing more growth, faster timelines through Bill 23, we need to be able to recoup those costs and not pass them all along to our municipalities. When there is a process in place where there is a benefit based on those applications that we're seeing. So being able to pass those additional costs along to those areas where there's growth and where those applications are warranted. Certainly Jenna's group's doing a lot of work to establish what capacity is needed. Is there any other additional streamlining initiatives? Again, working with the City of London, their project, so we can refine that. But ultimately, the development pressure is here, and we're seeing it in a number of ways. So,
Are there any questions to the report? Anna, please.
Yeah, I really appreciated the update. I was curious to know, or what other CAs are doing with their advocacy. I understand in the City of London, Mayor Morgan, his budget is going to be advocating. Hopefully we'll get the mayor's signing onto this letter. But what are other CAs doing? For instance, City of London, we have 3 CAs, and just wanted to have a better understanding how we are sharing this advocacy with CAs.
So usually advocacy work for conservation authorities is done through Conservation Ontario. But in this instance, I felt it necessary to bring something forward because this is what we're hearing locally. And I think it has to start somewhere. I think if it's successful in getting the signatures and getting that buy-in from municipalities, I think that maybe the recommendation could be to share that with Conservation Authority, Conservation Ontario, to be able to show what can be done. Now, certainly there are different, again, models of conservation authorities. Some are not seeing development pressures. There's just very low application rates. And there has been changes in Section 28 permits, which will, take that down even more because some of the requirements are just not there. That being said, the vast majority, this is a revenue source for most conservation authorities, and that is being direct. There's a direct linkage between that revenue source being frozen and the costs associated being put on municipalities. So I think that I'm presuming there should be good buy-in. The conversation I've had preliminarily with certainly have been positive, and I do want to thank Mayor Morgan specifically when we met. That I know he reiterated this with his speech to council. That I think this is important to show that we've made the statement that we're willing to work together, and I think this is to take that first step and to show our member municipalities this is just the first step. The reason why this is on the first step is because it is low-hanging fruit when it comes to changing how it is done. It is a minister's order. It's not legislation. It's not regulation. This is a decision the minister can make, and I think that if there's if it's shown that municipalities want that to happen, then that's something. Mayor Morgan also being we all like to say, as I'm a mayor myself, I think we all like to say that we have the same weight. We don't. The good thing is with the larger city, Mayor Morgan is part of the large city mayors group. And certainly it's, having that larger advocacy role and being able to have the access to the decision makers through those groups is important. And so I look forward to exploring that relationship further to be able to see where we can educate and make sure that we're here to help our municipal partners. We have a job to do, but we don't necessarily, again, we're all elected officials. How can we best serve our communities to do the work without necessarily burdening our taxpayers. I think it's a good point that we do need to expand it, but this is kind of a pilot.
I appreciate the comments. I think it's a start for sure. And I would encourage to continue that dialogue with the mayor of the city of London as well.
I support the advocacy. A question on the timeline and the procedure. Is it intention that we would get responses from the mayors before our next meeting? And would the letter prepared by the chair come back to the board for endorsement before it's sent to the minister?
Oh, yeah, yes, absolutely. So that's the second question. Certainly, I think that the board, to me, this is, it depends on timing on how mayors do stuff. If they're a strong mayor, they may be able to sign that. Myself, I never sign anything as mayor unless my council's endorsed it, because again, I'm just speaking on behalf of council. And that's the hope, that it is gone before council, so that everybody's educated as much as possible and on board. That's part of the workers' education that we need to do, and saying where our issues are and where there's opportunities. So it may be next meeting, but probably not. It's probably going to be a little bit longer than that, just depending on everybody's timeline and where they are at. But I certainly have no problem. Yeah, this is going to be a public letter, and I think the board needs to, see the results of this, see what kind of buy-in that we've had, and then that letter that's being sent out. Certainly not contentious. I don't see it seem contentious. It's just trying to educate the ministry as well on what we're seeing across the province and what we'd like to have done. Any further questions? Is there a mover for the motion? Paul and Jim? Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. It feels like this thing's cutting in and out. Is that what's happening? I'm never good with microphones. Okay, we will now move to reports number 7 in camera. There are no in-camera reports. We'll skip that. Reports for information and 8.1 annual report of information, administration and enforcement of section 28. Certainly great to see the final year results and see the timelines for 2023, but also the analysis showing improvements over the last few years on our timelines and on reporting. So I will turn it over to Tracy for comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight, thank you through the chair, that you're also seeing in agenda 8.3 some of the new requirements for an annual report. And those requirements through section 28 regulation now, the updates that are being proposed effective April 1st require this same type of report to be posted on our website. So we'll certainly make sure that that happens to meet those new requirements. I'm not 100% sure if this report will be entirely replicated next year, but something very similar again to see the new timelines that have also been required. But Jen is here to answer any questions about the reporting that you may have.
Any please.
Knowing it's still fairly recent, is there anything you can speak to in terms of significant changes? For example, that first paragraph of this report talks about rendering an application decision within 90 days for a major application. I assume that's 90 days after a complete application, but I'm not sure. So is there information for us at this meeting, or is it a future meeting where we'll get better clarity around some of these changes?
So just for clarity, we're just dealing with this annual summary of the annual report for the section 28. We'll get to 8.3 very shortly. But then, yeah, so if there's any questions on 8.2 with the annual report, this kind of wraps up all the things that we've seen throughout the year.
Yeah, I guess the only comment that I'd make is that it seems we're meeting the targets quite well. And that where there's comments about the work that we're doing or our staff are doing seems to be highlighting the exceptions to the rule. And somehow that gets blown up into being business as usual, whereas business as usual is things get done relatively quickly and well within the timeframes. I mean, there's the old 80-20 rule, we're at close to 95% fine. So I think it's a compliment to our staff that they are achieving what they've set out to do, which is to get applications that are complete, processed within the times, and they're short timeframes. So I think we should be complimenting staff and share that with folks outside this room about meeting these timelines, and I'm sure we're gonna meet the new ones as well. So thanks for giving me a platform.
Any questions for the violations annual report? Oh, sorry. I slipped the page, I shouldn't have.
Yep.
So that's, yeah, so absolutely. Any further questions of staff? Seeing none, mover to receive the report as information. Sandy and Harsh. Discussion. I think that what we see is that certainly this is taking more, these are taking staff time to be able to deal with. Certainly, anybody who's familiar with bylaw enforcement or any type of enforcement action, it is a long process and certainly time consuming. I know the staff was dealing with a lot of things that happened during COVID. I don't know if that's calmed down a little bit as people were home and doing things, but this is something that is unpredictable, I think, because
I think you jumped ahead to.
oh, yeah.
It doesn't have, so I think we're still on 8.1.
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't know if that's.
Sorry, I will call the vote. Sandy and I want to get ahead. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for indulging me. Thank you for. I take an elbow pretty easily. Now we will go on to 8.2 violations. And I will turn it over to Tracy for comment.
Yeah, the stage as well. I think everyone's wanting to jump ahead to 8.2. 8.2, again, with our violation summary. I just highlight that now with the provisions enacted under the Conservation Authorities Act related to Section 28, there's additional enforcement tools. And these have been in the Act and have not yet been proclaimed for a very long time. So we've been waiting for some of these tools like stop work orders to align with our building officials. So those will be helpful to have as we're dealing through violations. But this report Janet mentioned at last meetings to provide this summary to see where some of the challenges are. And to really highlight where staff time goes. Again, there's no mechanism to offset these costs. And again, the numbers are provided there. And I'm certainly here to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for violations for Sandy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the third page of the report, table 3, the current status, it has a box for awaiting further information, no communication for at least 2 months. Do we have some sort of trigger point where you don't hear from the landowner, something happens?
So often we issue a second notice of violation. So as I've noted in the report, we typically try and work collaboratively with the person that's undertaking the violation. So we're trying to provide education and moving towards something that we could approve or towards restoration. So that's always our first approach. If we don't think that enough progress is happening, we often will issue additional notices of violation to indicate that we're serious. We want to keep things moving. But again, it's often a workload thing. So if we continue to not hear anything, it's a bit of a question mark. Do we contact our lawyers and start proceeding through the courts? And that's always a tricky question to answer, about how many of those we move forward on. It depends on the seriousness of the violation, because so much staff time needs to be dedicated towards that. And we also incur quite significant legal costs whenever we pursue anything through the courts. So we have to be very careful about which ones we pursue down that road. Need to try and nudge and push before we make that decision. But as I've also noted in the report, we are moving towards a guidance document. So staff have been working on preparing a guidance document that will help us with some of those decisions. And so we're looking for your endorsement next month. We'll be bringing that forward in terms of getting your support for an approach that we'd like to take so that we have a more formal process in terms of how we evaluate these things and which ones we progress versus which ones, you know, we continue to push, but may ultimately never see resolved.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Further questions? Seeing none, is there a mover to receive for information? Kyler and Debbie, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And now we'll move to 8.3, new section 28 regulations. The effective date, again, as mentioned before, is very fast approaching of April 1st, leaving very little room to time to prepare the implementation materials. Conservation Ontario, I know Tracy has been very busy on the phone with them, as they're trying to provide as much guidance materials as possible. But certainly, it's recognized the efforts required to prepare and update the supporting information, websites, policies, and mapping. A very high level. This just came out, so we will, I would be prepared for a much further detailed report on how that would go then at the next month's meeting. So I'll turn that over to comment to Tracy.
Thank you for the chair. Certainly, we have had some meetings, but with Conservation Ontario is just trying to understand the implications for all CAs. By and large, most of the changes were expected. There is a couple that were not, and that impacts other CAs perhaps more than ours. As a reminder, this new regulation is one regulation that covers all conservation authorities, whereas previously each conservation authority had their own individual regulation. The province has treated that by having a schedule at the end of the regulation that outlines each individual CA's regulatory flood standards. So again, it's a handy reference document if you're curious about the different flood event standards that each CA has throughout the province, and they are very different. With ours, the one thing that jumps out at us is our name was wrong. They called us the Upper Thames Region Conservation Authority instead of River, but that happens a lot. Through an email that occurred, I think it was Friday afternoon, Thursday or Friday afternoon, the ministry is scheduling an information session to occur on March 7th. So there's still some clarity that we're seeking, again, understanding of why some of the changes were made. By and large, like I said, most are fairly consistent with what we were expecting, but a few instances where some unexpected regulation. One example is related to reconstruction of garages in the floodplain, as long as they're non-habitable. That would be an exception and not require, or I should say an exemption, and not require a permit. We find that a bit challenging because typically our staff are able to go out and have those discussions with the property owner and explain, you know, if you're rebuilding and reconstructing a garage or any building, is there a better location on the property to reduce risk to flooding, for example? So it kind of negates having those conversations, as well with the new requirements of having an allowances for secondary dwellings as a right. If there's a garage located on the property, there may be the belief that they can have it being an habitable structure and allow for additional people to be living in there. Whereas the exception only applies for those non-habitable structures. So I think there'll be a lot of education with our building officials. I'm hopeful that our policy document could kind of recognize best practices, perhaps still having those conversations so that we're still engaged, we can still provide information to share, but ultimately just not require that permit in the end. The same goes for municipal drains. If it's routine maintenance following the DART protocol, there's no requirement for a permit. Again, I hope that it's been our experience anyway, being able to go out to the site visits and have those conversations. Oftentimes landowners may have some project creep and a change in scope, while still being able to provide that knowledge and information rather than cutting us out of the process entirely just because the permit's not required. I think our staff have lots of great information and insight to share, and continuing to have those relationships so that we can share those with the building officials or drainage superintendents, whatever the case may be, is an important step. So I know the question is this going to reduce a lot of work? I'm hopeful that if we're able to still share that knowledge, share that information, it might not be a lot of reduced work. It's just maybe a lot less paperwork in the end for some of those, again, more routine type of applications. You'll see, and as you just saw in Jenna's report, we're seeing much more complex applications anyway. So those minor type of exemptions and exceptions, we typically may have treated those more as clearance letters in some cases anyway, but we'll see. We'll have more information to share next month, and I'm sure the province will be able to share on March 7th when we have that discussion.
Is there any questions of the report, knowing that we're going to get a more detailed analysis once staff have that available? Seeing none, is there a mover for group information? Skylar, Peter, discussion? The only thing I will say is that the province stuck to their usual timeline of something right before a long weekend, so they may need to change tactics if it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing now. That's when we expect legislation, so you should always pay attention Friday before that. With that, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, opposed, carried. And 8.4, project status update. See that there is quite a lot on there right now, especially a little bit later. Is there any questions in the report? If none, is there a mover and a seconder to receive it? Mark and George. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 8.5 is the Thames River Current February edition. New name. And also lots of still great information on there. Just a reminder again, share that far and wide. It shows the great work that everybody's doing and certainly creates interest in the authority and its projects. Is there a mover and a seconder to receive that? Scotty and Jim, as a discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And there are no reports from the committee, but there is a hearing committee that will be meeting on March 26th following the board meeting for a scheduled hearing on that time. And then we will notices of motions. So I do have a question that there is a motion to be brought to the table, I believe, by Hugh. Would you like to introduce that motion, Hugh? Sorry. Would you like to introduce your motion?
Oh, explain it or just read it?
We'll be dealing it with this time unless the board wants to, the board can vote for 2/3 if you'd like to deal with it today, or it'll be dealt with at the March 26th meeting. But it should be read into the record by the mover. Okay. So if you'd like to do that.
Okay. That the position of vice chair be included in the finance and audit committee as a right by being vice chair. I feel this will give the organization continuity in the case the chair cannot continue on the committee for any reason.
Thank you very much. And so that will be, unless there's a mover who wants to deal with that today, then we'll deal with that at the March 26th meeting. Seems to be the case. Are there any other notices of motions to be brought forward? Seeing none. And we were aiming for 11 o'clock and we did it. Thank you, everyone. That was a very good discussion. And we got a lot of work done today, and certainly Now we can move on to the fun part of the program. And we will take a break and then we will reconvene probably in 15 minutes. Let's go 11:15. So 20 minutes, I guess. Thank you very much. Gonna yell. That's the fun part of the job. So, welcome, everybody. I will just give a quick reminder that please refrain from whispering or side conversations while the meeting is running, as they could get picked up by the microphones. Okay, they will get picked up with microphones. They're very sensitive. So our microphones are up there. When the squares are glowing red, the microphones are muted, but they will be green. So keep that in mind, especially if it's comments about myself. This page over here. So at this time, I will ask, we'll go through some introductions because I know we have some new staff and some new board members. And so I will ask the board members to introduce themselves, the municipalities they represent, and any committees that they sit on for UTRCA / positions that they hold. And so I will go first, but after that, I will ask Tracy to do the same for her management team. So all of our members are aware. My name is Brian Petrie. I represent the municipality of Ingersoll, where I'm the mayor there. And I'm the current chair of the board. I'm on the hearings committee, the finance and audit committee. Certainly enjoy my time on the board. I've been here since 2016. I came halfway through a term, so coming on 8 years. And I certainly enjoy the work that happens here. It's a very high functioning organization, high functioning board. So that's always great to be on and meet new people and make sure this help provide the resources that are necessary for the people who do the work.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Dean Trotowski. I'm the deputy mayor for the municipality of West Perth. This is just wrapped up my first year as a member of the board, and starting into my second year, it's my pleasure to be serving as your vice chair for the board. Also serving on the finance audit committee as well as the hearing committee. It's been learning in the fast lane for me for the last year, but so far so good. And looking forward to working with, continuing to work with the board members and the staff. As outlined in our meeting before the break, we have lots of challenges, but with every challenge, there's an opportunity. So we'll work hard to put our best foot forward and carry on. Thank you.
I'm Debbie Heffernan. I represent municipality of Middlesex Center. So this is my second term on council and my starting second year in this board.
Hi, I'm Sandy Levin. What am I? I'm on the finance committee. I'm on the hearings committee. Third term of being appointed by the City of London as a citizen representative to the board.
George Way, Ward 4 Councillor, Township of Southwest Oxford. I also represent the Township of Norwich. I was on the board for 8 years, went off for 4 and came back on February last year.
Mark Schattenberg on the second term for the City of Woodstock on this board and also on the hearings committee.
Paul Mitchell, serving my second term as councillor, Township of Zora, second term on the board of Upper Thames, and I'm also on the finance and audit committee and the hearings committee.
Good morning, excuse me, everyone. I'm Jim Craigmile, councillor, Town of St. Mary's. This is my third term. I've just completed 1 year on this board. I also represent South Huron and the Township of Perth South.
Good morning, Scotty Zaire. I'm on represent the Township of UTRCA Tavistock, and this is my first term as a board member here.
Hugh McDermott, Deputy Mayor of Perth East, and the best part of the watershed. Look at it this way, it's so good. We've been there now for, on my farm, 180 years and no plan to be moving anywhere soon. And I've been on this board when we used to be over there and watch the dinosaurs walk by.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Anna Hopkins, a city councillor for the City of London. I have been on council going into my third term, as well as being a board member here as well. So, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Robert Kniker. I'm the deputy mayor for City of Stratford. First term for the city and first term for the Upper Thames. I sit on the Finance and Audit Committee for Upper Thames, on the Police Board, and Social Services and Infrastructure in Stratford.
Good morning, Peter Cuddy, first term counselor, City of London for Ward 3, so welcome all. This is my first term and thank you very much for having me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Skylar Frank. I'm a Ward 11 City Councilor for the City of London, and this is my first term on this board as well as on council.
Thank you to the members. Now, I just thought we'd highlight our management team members as well. I know we're having a full staff meeting in a few months, but there might be some new staff as well. So I'll give this opportunity. So Chris, you can start, stand and just give your introduction, how long you've been here, and we know from most.
There's no secret there, I guess. Chris Tasker, manager of water and management, for Thames for, I guess, 35 years.
I'm Jenna Lane. I'm the manager of environmental planning and regulations. I've been in this position since 2021, so almost 3 years, and been with the Upper Thames since 2017.
Hello everyone, Brent Brasher, been with the Upper Thames since 2008, and it would be my first term as manager of the land facilities and conservation areas.
I can't hardly hear. I've been here so long. I heard that. My name is Teresa Hollingsworth. I'm the manager of community corporate services, and I've been here about 40 years.
And last but not least, Brad Glaceman with the Integrated Watershed Management. I've been here since 1983. And just so nobody's going to understand this, but see, George, I really do work here.
For context, I was born in 1983. That's not dedication from staff. I don't know what is. Amazing. So with that, we will move on and we'll get the show on the road. We have a lovely presentation coming forward on watershed management strategy and the land management strategy update. And I'll turn that over to Tracy to introduce our presenters.
Okay, I too will be presenting the first part of this, so I'll move over to the podium. Thank you. On, yeah, okay, perfect. Seeing that we had so many people available in the room, is it on? Or it doesn't seem to be.
Pick it up after really.
Wow, really close? I'm gonna move to the other mic.
Yeah.
And this one seems to work a little bit better for me anyway. With so many people available and able to join us, I'm going to walk around because I know this is a little bit of an awkward corner here. But I thought we'd take an opportunity to update not only the board, but also to staff on the number of strategies that we have to complete by the end of 2024. So the two main ones that we'll be talking about today are the core watershed-based resource management strategy and the conservation areas strategy. So, next slide, please. So a little bit about what these strategies are, we'll be providing. There's certainly legislative requirements for us to undertake. We'll talk a little bit, and Tara will lead the presentation on the watershed management strategy, and then Brandon will take over and cover the land strategy and inventory, and also the engagement, our proposed timelines. And you'll see some changes in terminology. Next slide, please. With the mandatory programs and services legislation made under the Act, the Conservation Authorities Act, there are certain requirements for what we need to complete to, again, reflect our mandatory programs and services, but also identify our other programs and services that benefit and enhance those other programs that are considered mandatory. So the province requires the CAs to prepare a core watershed-based resource management strategy. That is their language. We've never been a big fan of that title. We've been shortening it to, you've heard watershed-based resource management strategy, watershed-based resource management strategy. Really, we've been calling it the watershed management strategy. Some CAs are even shortening that to the watershed strategy. So we may change our terminology as well as we move through this process. And there's the other big deliverable is the conservation area strategy. Again, that's defined in legislation. And in our case, not all of our lands are conservation areas. So we've been calling it the land strategy instead. With that, the land inventory is something that we've been working on to inventory all of our lands, understand what those land uses are, and have a complete listing of those properties. There's very much integration between those three components. We'll outline it in the slides that in the overviews that are provided, but really our watershed strategy is about our watershed as a whole. Our lands within that conservation or within the strategy are a component of that, and the reason why we have our lands are because they are important to achieving our watershed goals and objectives. And of course, our lands themselves have different functions within that. So again, providing a little bit of an overview context and certainly recognize that these things are all very much integrated. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Tara to talk about the watershed management strategy.
Is it okay if I don't use the mic? I tend to be a little loud, and then if I add.
And that's the back of the room over
Are
there.
you guys okay? You can hear me? Awesome. This loud. So I just want to introduce myself first. I'm Tara Tier. I'm the Watershed Science Coordinator, and I work in Brad's unit, the Integrated Watershed Management Unit. There's two coordinators, and I take the science side. So thank you for listening. I see this as a great opportunity to share this strategy, even though it's mandated by the province. It's a great opportunity for us as an authority to step back and actually look at our programs and services that we deliver. So the purpose of the strategy is actually to look at improving our effectiveness and our efficiencies, both in terms of the mandatory programs and services. So those are the Cat 1s, but also the municipal and other program and services. So the Category 2s and the Category 3s. So this strategy is supposed to be looking at how can we improve that efficiency of that. Also included in the strategy, we're looking at gaps. So what gaps do we currently have or missing links that we want to do to help support these programs and services? And also what kind of risks are we facing as an authority or as a watershed? And how can we develop programs and services that address those risks? Next slide. So on this slide, the province has set up a rough guideline that they would like to see the watershed management strategy follow, and they call it a scaffolding process. So essentially each component feeds or follows from what you gain from the past component. So I like to think of the right-hand side as sort of the descriptive components. So those 3.5 kind of circles that go down. And then the second half, which is the left-hand side, is more of the work plan components. Right now, to progress to date, we've done a lot of the descriptions. So we've set our principles and objectives. We've characterized the watershed. We've identified and also assessed the issues and risks to the watershed. And we're starting to identify our actions for that. If I get the next slide. So this gives you a brief description of the progress to date. So we've compiled the background information so that identified and synthesized our relevant guidance documents and our characterization reports. We've identified and characterized a range of Upper Thames programs and services. And that includes gaps not just in the Category 1 mandatory programs, but also gaps in those other and municipal programs that we have agreements with. So our Category 2s and 3s. So the staff have been involved in this the whole time, helping describe and identify the programs and services we use and also what gaps we have. And then we've also identified connections between these programs and services. A quick example would be our flood hazard program has flood communications. So a connection to the flood program is also made to our communications programs and services. Next slide. So then continuing, we've also started to identify our risks. So these are risks that we're kind of seeing occurring in the watershed. The big one, climate change. Climate change has a lot associated with it. It's increasing phosphorus potentially. It's affecting invasives that we're starting to see in the landscape. It also influences our hazards. So that's considered one of the big risks in our watershed. Other types of risks, for example, could be our land use or land cover change that we see over time. Different pressures we have on our recreational facilities, changes in legislature that we're all very familiar with. Things like cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, that's another risk. So we have a series of risks that we've identified to our watershed as well. And what types of programs and services do we need to start addressing those risks? So this comprehensive internal review, so like I said, we've had a lot of input from managers and staff. I have a few more units yet that I'm going to meet in the next couple of weeks to complete that. And then we're hoping to have a final first draft by the end of March, at which time I'd like to come with that draft. And then at that point, we're going to start shifting now into public engagement. And the public engagement component is really going to help us. Did we get the risks identified correctly? What other ones are out there? It's going to help identify the actions that we can take and also implementing those actions. So we'll move on. So before I get into that part, I just want to show you what the strategy, how it's organized. Right now, we've organized it according to our 6 main objectives. So we have our people and talent as one objective, then sustainability and innovation. And then we go to natural hazards management, stewardship and science, conservation areas and nature. And then our final objective is empowerment and engagement. And within each one of those objectives, we've kind of got broader types of programs and services offered in each one. And then within those types is our list of programs and services. So what I really want to emphasize here is that we have the people and talent at the core of our programs and services. The other thing this diagram hopefully shows is the integration. So we see ourselves operating from the inner core outwards and also within each one of those rings. So it's meant to be an integrative kind of visual, but then behind the scenes, we have a spreadsheet. And in that spreadsheet, we've broken down all our programs and services according to those broad types within each objective. And it has a whole bunch more information in that spreadsheet. It not only lists the program and services, it gives a description, but it also does things like identifying gaps. So what things should we be doing in order to fulfill those mandatory Cat 1s and then those 2 and 3s that we have agreements with? It also identifies the relationships between those different programs and services, as well as a bunch of other information in the future that we could use, such as tying people's positions perhaps to those programs and services. Next slide. So as I said, we've done the description part so far. The next phase is looking at the work plan. And this is going to start once we have that first final draft completed at the end of March. We've already started a bit of engagement with our Indigenous communities, but we also want to expand that to our municipalities and partners, as well as the public. And there's a slide in the future of this presentation that Brandon is going to touch on that'll explain that a bit more. What I want to emphasize is that for the watershed strategy, that engagement is going to help us also prioritize our actions and our work plan. So we're going to hear from the public and from our partners, what should we be focusing on next, given all the risks and the gaps that we've identified. And then what we're going to do then is we're going to ensure that we have a process to complete a review, and an update is going to be included in the watershed strategy. So once we have the strategy developed, we need to ensure that we have a process for how are we going to keep updating this? How are we going to ensure that we're reviewing it? Maybe a new threat will come in the next 5 years that we want to make sure we incorporate in this strategy. And that's really it. The updates are going to become an ongoing process of our programs and services. So the next presentation you're going to hear about is one program service or one component of this overall strategy, and that's that land use strategy and inventory. So I think we're going to take questions at the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Tara. Okay, so as Tara mentioned, the CA strategy or the land strategy and the inventory are essentially components of the watershed management strategy. And the inventory is sort of obviously the base information, what we have, kind of what we've used those lands for up till now, and how those lands connect with each other, as well as the municipally owned lands and trail systems as well. Next slide. Okay, so the land strategy The land strategy is a report that summarizes the history of the Upper Thames land acquisitions, previous strategies, major studies that we've done over the years, management plans, as well as the past and current land uses. So what are our lands being used for now? What have we designated them for currently? And then the strategic objectives is the next piece that the strategy really hits home at, and that's what we're going to do over the next 10 years on our land. So how do we want to manage the land going forward? So essentially, sort of the tagline, how we got here, right? So all of our accomplishments, those studies, those management plans and strategies we've had in the past, what's changed over the years in how we've acquired lands, disposed of lands, and managed our lands, as well as the current state where we are now, and then our plan for the next 10 years. So really, the land strategy is sort of a 10-year picture of where we came from and how we want to move forward with our lands and how we want to manage our lands. Again, much like the watershed strategy, this does require public consultation and periodic review. It has been left up to the individual conservation authorities to put that framework together as far as what that public consultation is supposed to look like, and as well what the periodic review looks like. So that's something we're going to have to. And again, it is something that's required to be posted to the website and completed by the end of December of this year. So the lands inventory, which sort of feeds into the land strategy, and vice versa for certain components. The land strategy is basically an Excel spreadsheet, right? And it itemizes each parcel or PIN number, property identification number, and the PIN number is essentially a number that's assigned to every property in the province based on a numerical system. And so there's various fields in that spreadsheet that we, through the guidance document, there's 13 mandatory fields and 10 optional fields that we can include. So things like name, location, land use, year acquired. And this last one, suitability for housing. And what that is essentially do our parcel, we have to look at all of our parcels and find out, are they suitable for housing or housing infrastructure? And we have to make that known and list that for each parcel that we own. And there's a whole set of criteria that goes along to help guide that and where, if that property is suitable for housing or not. And then the other thing that we have to do in the inventory is look at each parcel and identify it under land use category. So this is different from the category 1, 2, and 3 that we've talked about earlier this morning. These are land use categories. This is, again, Conservation Ontario was really good at coming up with sort of a guidance document for CAs on how to proceed. So the land use categories, active or passive recreation, are 2 different categories. Management area, and then there's another area, administrative area, which we don't have any of. But those are sort of the 3 main categories that we'll be identifying each parcel to. Again, must be completed by December of this year. However, the difference between the inventory and the 2 other strategies, the land strategy and the watershed resource strategy, is that the inventory is not required for any public consultation, posted to our website, or we don't have to submit to the province. Essentially, it's complete it, file it, and wait for a request to submit it. So although all of these 3 projects or initiatives are really onerous, they're time consuming, they are helpful, right? The deadline obviously is not preferable, being so end of this year, but they will be helpful to the Upper Thames. As far as it sets a path forward, right, for our direction of how we're going to manage our lands. And the land inventory is especially that case because we eventually want to put all this information, convert it from a spreadsheet, put it into a database that we can use, so we have one central location for all of our land inventory and all of our land information. So that's really key. A graphic on the side there is just an example of some of the land use categories that we're looking at as far as some of our different types of property. So for example, Wildwood Conservation Area would be in a category 3. And Royal Kinter, you can see on the slide there what sort of category in those Cat 1, 2, and 3 programs that they fit into. Next slide. So lands inventory, out of that, we know we have nearly 6,000 hectares of land in our watershed. That includes the 3 multi-use CAs, day use CAs, as well as agricultural lands, wetlands and forests and tracts, as well as our many hectares of floodplain lands, valley lands, and erosion hazard lands. So all of that, we have identified over 300, I think there's 309 property identification numbers. So that's individual PIN numbers that are legal property information numbers for our property holdings. Next slide. Just an example of what our GIS staff have done to create this, be able to help us visually when we're doing this work. And you can see those 4 categories I mentioned earlier: CA active, CA passive, administration area, which we don't have any administration areas actually, and as well as management areas. And there is criteria as to, or definitions as to what those mean. As you can see on the right, this is the very north end of what we consider the Fanshawe CA group of properties. So right at Thorndale Road, Valley View. So you can see the light green there is passive recreation area under that PIN number, that larger PIN number. And then there's also some blue areas to the very top of the screen there, which are considered management areas. They don't have any trails through them. There's no other recreational opportunities. Those are floodplain lands that we have acquired decades ago. So just an example, just provides us a visual for when we're trying to put these maps out and sort of look at all of our parcels of land, or larger parcels or groupings of pins. And we can sort of look at that and see how they integrate with each other. Next slide. So the land strategy and inventory, some progress to date. With the land strategy, we will have a preliminary draft ready by March. So far, we completed most of the background information. We still have a bit of fine tuning to do to that data, but most of the background information, the history of acquisitions that we've made over the years, previous strategies, those documents, those management plans, and some of those other major projects that we've done over the years. We've compiled a list of those and put them in a table form. Still to do is summarize those inventory findings. So we're in that stage right now. We're just fine tuning some of the information. Looking at the goals and objectives. So what that's going to do is we need to get input from managers and staff. We've started that process already, and in the coming weeks, we'll be increasing that, liaise with other staff as well as managers to look at our goals and objectives, essentially what we want to do on our lands over the next 10 years. With that, once we get all that information together, we get that input from staff, we'll be ready to complete that draft. And the next phase will be outreach to Indigenous communities, municipalities, other industry partners, and the general public. Next slide. With the lands inventory, again, the first draft will be ready by March. Most of the fields are already filled in. We do have, again, some fine tuning we have to do to some of the data we've compiled already. So we have to finalize some of those categories, category 1, 2, and 3. For a few of the pins that we have. We have to add in the years that we've acquired those, and some properties, we do have most of that information. There are some properties where there are some gaps, so we may have to dig a little deeper, or simply NA, right? We're not sure when we acquired it. And then we have to look at how all of our properties integrate with other provincially, municipally owned, or publicly owned lands and trails. That's one of the key components of this the lands inventory. Once we compile all the data, fine tune all the data, obviously we'll double check and make sure that we haven't missed anything or there's no gaps. With the land inventory, we will have this to provide routine updates. Although it's not required for us to put out for public consultation, we will have that document that information and do a internal periodic review as well. Make sure that any new lands that we acquire, we put into this database, this spreadsheet, and eventually a database. If we dispose of lands, conversely, we'll remove them from that database, and that's sort of the routine update as we move forward. So the engagement piece, not the lands inventory, but the watershed resource strategy as well as the land strategy, they do have an engagement piece as a required component to them. So with municipalities, we're looking at hosting meetings with the municipalities in each county, staff and council input. So we'll be, putting together a summary document of both of these strategies to be able to provide. Full documents will be available as well. We like to meet with municipal staff to get their input on our strategies and if we're on the right track and if there's any gaps identified and how we can move forward with those. As well, as Tara mentioned, there have been some preliminary discussions with Indigenous communities as well. So we're going to continue that, initiate those meetings, meet with those Indigenous communities on our strategies and look for input. One of the ideas that we've come up with is try to look for other CAs that we can collaborate with when we're going out to Indigenous communities, because their time is valuable, and because all CAs are mandated to complete both of these strategies, they could be inundated with several multiple CAs coming at them for engagement. So we're looking at partnering with Lower Thames when we're going to be doing a lot of our Indigenous engagement. So as not to duplicate efforts. So again, with the Indigenous community engagement, it is going to be ongoing. We'll start that process throughout the year, continue that, but we anticipate, and it's most likely that it's going to be continuing into next year and beyond. So it's not going to be a one and done effort. It's just going to be something that we're going to start at this stage and sort of build upon as we grow. And then the final piece of that is the public engagement. So we're looking at mainly online engagement for these strategies in the form of, presenting them, posting to the website, providing a summary document. They're quite lengthy. So we'll have both the summary document and the full documents available, and then potentially looking at some surveys that the public can fill out so we can get feedback on missing gaps or any piece of information in our lands that we're not aware of, or just to try to get a better idea, a better sense of what the overall community uses our lands for and what they would like to see going forward. Next slide. So this is just a bit of a visual for the project timelines for both the watershed resource strategy as well as the land strategy. Again, we're sort of in that winter to spring phase right now, where the drafts are being completed. We're looking for staff input. We're going to start to plan for our outreach and what those what that consultation, that engagement looks like. It started to initiate meetings with Indigenous communities as well. That will continue from now right into the fall and the winter time and beyond. We will be starting to reach out to municipalities and staff and councils for those engagement pieces as well, looking for input. Then the public engagement will happen over the summertime. Once we get all of that feedback from the municipalities, from the various councils, as well as the public in the summer, then late summer into the fall, we can start to finalize those strategies, put some of that information together, go back to staff, discuss it internally with staff, and then continue that outreach with Indigenous communities, full board presentation, and then by December, complete both strategies, post them to the website, and then look to our routine updating of the strategies and what that process looks like moving forward. That's it. Thank you. Any questions? If anybody has any?
Making sure this was on. Yeah, again, thanks again to Tara and Brandon for putting this together, but also Kathy Quinlan's been in the background doing lots of this work, as well as Eleanor. Again, we recognize this is a big project, and they are big projects, and wanting to make sure that we're reaching all staff, but also reaching out to our municipalities as well as partners and our other partner agencies and the public. So this is a great start. There's lots of background information to pull together, so that's no small feat that we have. I guess we're fortunate in that way that we have had lots of background information, but maybe all a little bit scattered or piecemeal and very project based. And this, again, I view it as a huge opportunity to have this all in one place to provide that guidance and direction. Don't love the timelines, but certainly something that will be a huge benefit for the authority moving forward. So happy to answer any questions. Yeah, Jim.
Thank you. very interesting on the lands inventory. I guess in that spreadsheet that you have in the background, I was wondering, are you also putting in that spreadsheet what the acquisition cost from and where the funds came from?
The cost itself, we don't have, there's no requirement to put the cost in. But there is a field in there that talks about where we got the funding from, or where the funding came from, whether it was from municipal or provincial government or through another avenue. So we do have that. I think most of our properties, we have that information. There are a handful that you don't. So we'll have to go digging in the archive, see if we can locate it, and otherwise it'll have to be listed as a NA. We don't have it, so.
I just add to that, some of the PSAB work that was done a few years ago, we do have some of that information. It's kind of over in our accounting system, again, for asset management. And we see asset management being a huge way to implement these projects moving forward, to better manage our lands as assets and others. But again, it's not really part of the day-to-day activities, it's part of this inventory, something that we do have.
So the land, if I understand it, the land management strategy feeds into the watershed strategy. And are you going out for public engagement on both pieces together? Because, you know, change to one means a change to the others. So I'm seeing nodding, so I'm glad to see that.
They're dovetailed together, so it'll be a collaborative effort. It's, yeah, looking at it, it's, you know, the distinction between the two is, in our minds, it's different, but they'll have to be a collaborative.
You want to say something too?
I was just gonna say, I think the watershed strategy, the kind of engagement we'd be looking at is gonna be broader, whereas the land strategy can have some very specific questions about the lands. And this, it's just figuring out, because we have so much information in the watershed strategy, trying to figure out what the audience needs to hear that they'd be interested in, right? So, but yeah, the two, we want to do, we don't want to duplicate efforts. We don't want to come to the municipality once for one and then 2 weeks later, same thing for the other ones.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Outside, it's hard to tell seasons anymore. Different time of year, but I'm sure some of the flooding group was kind of maybe twitching a little bit with that. So now we get to move on to the really fun part of the program. And these are the presentations of our awards. We'll start with the Inspiration Award, which is presented to a teacher, group, or school that through their actions, projects, or programs encourage watershed residents to take an interest in the natural environment, create connections with nature, and contribute to its preservation. This is something that a lot of our residents, this is the front-facing programming that they see and really know the UTRCA about. So with that, I will invite Carly Lear, trouble saying names today, to introduce the 2024 recipient.
Good morning. Everyone hear me okay? Yeah, great. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dan Van Lieshout as this year's recipient of the Inspiration Award. I first met Dan, I don't know if Dan remembers this, but we were on a camping trip in Pelee Island. And at the time, Dan had 20 16-year-olds with him camping as part of the environmental leadership program. And Dan, being the kind and welcoming person that he is, came over and gave us a tour of the site, talked about some of the logistics of camping with 16-year-olds, 20 of them, and the type of restoration work that they were doing. And after the tour, I remember walking away and looking at my partner and going, oh my God, that takes commitment. And I think that is a great way to describe Dan. Dan has spent the past 17 years building the environmental leadership program at CCH here in London. And the program really is kind of the first of its kind. It takes students in grade 11 and 12, he has them for the whole semester. And during that semester, they build their local ecological knowledge, participate in those restoration projects, get involved with community partners. So it really is a unique experience for them. And they go camping in the backcountry and do all those type of fun things too. The program has a fabulous reputation, not only among students, but among educators and among community partners. So Dan is entering the sunset of his career. So I'm very happy that we're able to recognize him, his passion, and his dedication to the program, to his students, and to the environment through this award. So thank you and congratulations, Dan. I nominated Dan Van Lieshout for the Inspiration Award this year because he really has been a pioneer in the field of environmental education. For the past 17 years, Dan has been running the Environmental Leadership Program, the ELP program, at Catholic Central High School here in London. And this program is really unique. The students are together as a class for 4 credits in the day. And they have this really intensive experience where they get different outdoor experiential learning. They get to go on a winter camping field trip. They do a wilderness kind of outback tomogamy, and then they work with us for other specific certifications. They'll get their GPS training here with us, often at Fanshawe. They get GIS certifications and training, habitat restoration, stream assessment. So they really are exposed to a wide variety of things that happen in the environmental field.
One of the programs I've been very fortunate to facilitate with Dan and the ELP students, environmental leadership students, here at Fanshawe is the MAP, Compass, and GPS program. And the students come to Fanshawe and we discover map reading, we discover how to read compasses with maps, and also how to utilize a GPS machine. Dan is, as a teacher, is one of those people I consider a mentor because he stands back and allows the students to experientially get their own ideas, and the students really appreciate that he's there to help them guide through their journey of creating their own environmental ethic.
Dan offers experiences that enhance student learning, such as bringing his students out to volunteer at the Water Festival. Not only are they excited to share what they know about water, they're also motivated to create a great experience for the younger students. He also brings his students out to plant trees. No matter where we are in the watershed, he brings his students out and inspires them to take better care of our environment and to learn about biodiversity.
It has been really wonderful to work with Dan over the past 10 years that I've been with the Upper Thames. He is a very kind and considerate person, and you can tell that he has the students' interests really in his heart. He has really created a whole generation of environmental stewards, kids that care about the environment, that are aware about environmental issues, and that also have the skills and the knowledge to take action in their own communities. Dan has also been really pivotal in creating partnerships and building a community here in the Upper Thames. He works with a diverse array of partners and connects the students with a lot of different community partners and gives them different experiences, and also connects students to complete co-ops. So we have kids reaching out, working in the environmental field, which is so wonderful to see. Dan, we wanted to say a big congratulations to you for receiving the 2024 Inspiration Award. You really are an inspiration to us here at the Upper Thames and to all the students you work with. So thank you.
to come up, I'd like to present you with this award before I break it. It's very beautiful. We'll warn you, it is wedged in there very nicely. All right. Sure, it's probably the best. Thank you so much for the work you've done on behalf of the board and all the staff, and certainly on behalf of all the students and creating great stewardship citizens for the future. Thank you very much. Awesome. That's the adventure.
Yeah.
Set that there.
Remind me of that, so I don't bring it. Well, thank you. I'm gonna repeat a couple of things that have been said, but that's what I've kind of prepared, so bear with me for a moment. So my program, the Environmental Leadership Program, I teach is a 4-course bundle of credits that students take with an interest in ecology, resource management, environmental science, outdoor education. Typically, the students are in grade 11. They take a biology, resource management, and 2 co-op credits in their 2nd semester. Unlike a traditional co-op where a student would go by themselves to a placement, my students do those together as a team, as a group. Many different hands-on experiences at many different placements. And that enables them to develop outdoor skills and acquire ecological knowledge. Each year I have about 20 students, but over the years that's added up to about 425, 450 students since the program started in 2000. So it was running for 6 years before I was there, and this is the 25th year of our program. Students spend about 45 of the 90 days in the instructional semester outside, doing things that complement and enhance the things that we do in the classroom. And I would estimate over my teaching career, I have taken a group or a class outside about 450 times. A lot of times outside in about 20 years. But community program partners are essential, as Carly had mentioned, and they're an essential part of our success. Partners provide co-op work experience. They provide insight about potential future career paths. They provide some mentoring and talk about post-secondary education. Some of the program partners that we have worked with each and every year include the Conservation Authority and other conservation authorities, Ministry of Environment, Conservation of Parks, M&R, Fanshawe College in Western, Thames Talbot Land Trust, the NCC, Nature Conservancy of Canada, Nature London, London Garden Club, Thames Valley Trail Association, City of London, Food Bank, West Haven Golf Course, and a few others. But the Upper Thames Conservation Authority has certainly been an important partner for us. And I'd sincerely like to thank all the wonderful staff that we've had the opportunity to work with, that I've aligned with over the years. I know I won't capture all their names here, but I do want to specifically mention a few people specifically, both current and former staff members, and highlight some of the activities that we've been involved with. But we've really seen that in some of the photos already. So that would be Julie and Brad and Jess in terms of tree planting initiatives. Joanna, Pat, Kim, and Patty in terms of GIS and navigation skills, compass work. Carly and Miranda in terms of ICE, which is innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship training. And Linda, especially Smith at Waterfest, and many, many others. I also want to acknowledge both Teresa Hollingsworth and Linda Nix, who also participated in ELP through their children over the years. In addition to our local excursions, we spend about approximately 3 weeks outside camping, including a 7-day trip to Pelee Island, where Canada's most southern location, and a week-long canoe trip in Temagami. And it's in those situations that I've really seen the biggest growth in children, and sorry, in young adults, really, and students, sometimes children. Not only academically through their experience learning, but in a vast array of people skills, like communicating about, why their food group is missing the 4 boxes of KD that was the lunch that day. Like leading grade 3 and 4 students on a nature walk through Meadow Lily Woods, for example. Being organized to have enough propane in the camp stove to make it through the week. And that time management, of course, and being flexible and adaptive and being prepared. And the quote, there's no such thing as bad weather. There's just bad clothing choices. I've seen a few of those. But it's amazing to see teenagers that their parents say will never do any yard work out there, planting, weeding, mulching with their peers and seeming to have quite fun doing it. Although I have come to gauge pretty well the time periods that they'll handle that before it falls apart. But it's it's been very rewarding and satisfying taking mostly urbanites or urban kids, many with little or no camping experience, and having them go outdoors. Lost my spot here. Providing them with lots of opportunities to develop their skills and nurture their passions. By far, my favorite part is taking these eager students to Temagami to do a wilderness canoe trip, following the portage routes of our Indigenous peoples and the early fur traders, to rely on each other to get through the portage crossings with physical struggles and bad weather and the early season bugs, especially the black flies in June. And thankfully, they enjoy the 16 and 17-year-old sweet blood better than mine at this age. But the rewards are huge. Experience the iconic Canadian landscape, the boreal forest, the rock outcrops, the rivers and water lakes. On first hand is amazing. Appreciating the darkening sky and gazing up at the Milky Way. Seeing wildlife, loons, turtles, moose, and the occasional bear. And really improving their mental well-being. Getting a chance to disconnect from the digital matrix, turn the cell phones off for a week. It's fantastic. And as the saying goes, there's no Wi-Fi in the forest. You'll just get a stronger connection. And my experience for sure, what better way to get a connection than to sleep on the ground, even if it's a bit uncomfortable. And I think I'm approaching 320 sleeping on the ground occasions in my ELP experience. But overall, the experiences range from habitat restoration projects, species identification, no trace camping and hiking and canoeing, visiting various facilities, having guest speakers into the class. These all have helped create lifelong memories for the kids, friendships, and nurture a strong connection to the natural environment. Provide students with a glimpse of a variety of different environmental and recreational career paths. And it's certainly rewarding to see the young people express their gratitude and thanks at the end of the semester, to hear that it was their favorite time in high school, for sure, and that their experience changed them in a positive way, and they become earth keepers and stewards of the land. So with that, I'd like to thank the UTRCA for being part of ELP, and thank you for recognizing the program today.
I think we can certainly see why that is award worthy, and thank you for your work that you've done there and all the lives that you've touched, because it does amazing once we get in the outdoors, it gets a hold of you. So, and there's lots of opportunity within those fields. We're always hiring. So next we'll move on to the community award. And the community award is presented to a community organization, institution, municipality, business, or collaboration that has undertaken a significant conservation action that improves the local environment and encourages community action. And I'll invite Karen Winfield up to introduce the 2024 Community Awards recipient.
Getting close to lunch, so I'm gonna skip my jokes, I guess, for this one. Sorry, Damien. Up the knock joke at lunch there. So being in regulations, should have tied my hair before I got up. Being in regulations, I've had the opportunity to review all sorts of construction projects, bridge projects, trail realignments, naturalized area compensation and restoration projects. So I think I've been to pretty much every park in the city of Woodstock, and there's some gems. For those of you who like hiking and biking and sports, there's a park for everybody. There's naturalized parks with trees everywhere. There's the mowed parks with the picnic tables, concession stands, sports areas, if you're into that. And there's dog parks. There's a park for everyone. And while you're enjoying those parks, don't take for granted all the work that goes into maintaining those parks. It takes a whole team to make sure the areas are safe and the areas are enjoyable for your use. So I know our own park staff are at that one as well. So we work with a lot of municipal park staff, but there's some that have always stood out for us. And our staff normally have dealt with Rita Horan and Chris Kern for a lot of the projects that we deal with. They're the main faces we deal with, but I don't want to discredit Brian Connors, because I actually wrote his name down on the page. Don't forget to mention Brian. We've had some great communications with Brian as well, and thankfully he showed up today as well. So, but it takes a whole team. But there's a group of us who have nominated the City of Woodstock Parks Department with Chris and Rita for the Community Award for 2024. So I just want to tell you one of my first memories of Chris Kern. I don't know if he remembers, but we were in Burgess Park, which is a well-naturalized area just off Highway 2. And we were both staring with very perplexed looks on our face at something that was being constructed in the river. We weren't really sure who was doing it or even what it was. It looked like a water ski ramp, you recall? And we were there with Leon Tryon, who was another colorful retired Woodstock Park staff member, if any of you remember him. So I still have a picture, Chris, of that very perplexed look you have. I have a photo of that downstairs. And then over time, Chris and I commiserated together on some of the unfortunate tree removal and clear cutting of woodlots in the city, because aside from all the fun stuff of getting to design and look after the parks, the city park staff are also responsible for enforcement of the city tree cutting bylaws. So there was some bad moments in time too. But one good moment, another good memory, one of my favorite ones of Chris was in Southside Park. They were doing a channel realignment of Cedar Creek, which is a pretty sizable creek in that area of the park. And to do that, you have to construct the new channel, let it stabilize, divert the water into it from the creek, and then fill in the old one. And as part of that construction process, when they were lowering the water in the old channel, unexpectedly realized it was full of a mussel bed that nobody had picked up on. The studies hadn't picked up on it. Even our staff hadn't really thought that there was going to be a giant mussel bed there. But Chris grabbed his crew and went into action. And they got a assembly line of buckets. And how many mussels did you save that day, Chris?
About eight large garbage pails full.
Hundreds. And they were all different sizes. I think we have the photos of that as well. So, I mean, a lot of people in this room, we would have jumped in to save those mussels, because the fish can get out of the way when the water starts going down, but the mussels are stranded and they would have died that day. Chris and his crew jumped in. And again, a lot of people in this room would have done that, especially Aaron. But there's a lot of people who would not. And so I was really super impressed with the way he jumped in that day. That was awesome, Chris. And he's done it so many times with other construction projects. I'm so happy. I was so happy to know that there was someone responsible looking after construction projects and protecting the water courses in the city of Woodstock. And then I met Rita, and she had an equal love for the environment. And we too commiserated on some of the tree removal projects and the unnecessary woodlot clearing in the city. But we also worked together with some pretty creative ideas to get restoration on those areas. And I saw the spark in both Chris and Rita that they love what they do, and they have gone over and above so many times to protect the environment and make sure their parks are enjoyable and fun places to be. I just want to add from Brad Hartner, who couldn't be here today. Their enthusiasm and energy helps to protect the local environment and encourages residents to get active in nature. The Woodstock Parks Department have always supported our UTRCA partnerships and education teams, from site prepping or community planting project sites, delivering mulch on short notice, helping to pull out a stuck pickup truck. Like there's a story there. Or giving presentations to our green leaders, grade 7 and 8 classes. They are true partners of the Thames River staff. So it's been great working with Chris and Rita and all the other park staff that it's a group effort. So thank you. Join me in recognizing them for the 20.
Don't worry, there is a video.
Just to get there to share.
There we go.
Let me start off by saying a huge congratulations to Chris, Rita, and the whole Woodstock City Parks Department on this well-deserved community award. I've had the great fortune to work with the Woodstock Parks Department in every one of my 20 years at the Conservation Authority. It started early in my career with Dan Major, Leon Tryon, Bob McFarlane, and more recently with Chris and Rita and Brian Connors and all the other staff at the Parks Department. We have partnered on countless projects through the years, naturalizing city parks, working on improving stormwater management ponds, building wetlands, building trails, hosting community events. And you can always be guaranteed that the City of Woodstock is on the side of the local natural environment, enhancing and preserving Woodstock's natural spaces. It's a delicate balance that they achieve perfectly by protecting those places while also giving access to Woodstock residents to enjoy those places. One project I can really highlight is the work on the Burgess Park and Standard Tube lands in Woodstock. We've just in 2024 are completing the 10 years of recommendations of the Burgess Park Master Plan. The series of projects done there was a real partnership between UTRCA and the Parks Department and lots of different organizations and community groups and classes and volunteers within Woodstock and the surrounding area. There's a real legacy of successful projects, tens of thousands of trees planted, thousands of people involved, and wildlife structures and erosion control projects and wetlands and trails. It has created a real gem, natural gem in the city of Woodstock.
Chris and Rita offer a professional, courteous, and conservation-minded perspective when we work with them through different permitting and planning applications. They're a supportive staff, and you know when you work with those two, we feel like we're always on the same page. I think it's important to have a conservation-minded staff when you're working in a municipal capacity. It allows for somebody to look at projects to see where improvements can be made, and it affects your overall community as a whole, where you're providing improvements and opportunities for those who may not get the chance to see conservation in action. So we appreciate their active efforts to always keep that front of mind in any of the projects Woodstock City Parks do.
I've seen a tremendous legacy of projects emerge in Woodstock through my time working there. The success, sustainability, and community enjoyment of those places and properties is a real tribute to the dedication and hard work of the Woodstock Parks Department. On a personal note, I really want to say thank you to all the people that works in the Parks Department for always answering my calls. They've gotten me out of some jams in Woodstock, pulling trucks, stuck trucks out of wet spots and fields, or mowing a project site. It's always on short notice, and they always come through for me. And I want to just say personally how important that is to me. They've really gotten me out of some tough jams in the past. Once again, I want to say a big congratulations on receiving this year's Community Award.
our chamber stuff come up and it's always a world, and I'm sure the CAs as well. Lots of time you hear the bad things, but it's always great when we can say thank you to the great things that happen. Same with this one. Very good. The board and UTRCA, we'd like to thank you for your work that's been done. Congratulate you with this award. It's always great to see the residents in the watershed and our municipalities are the true beneficiaries of the work that you do. And it's only you and the staff that really know the work that goes into it. So without that dedication, it wouldn't happen. And I'm sure Mark's pretty proud today as a resident and counselor. So thank you very much.
This is on the screen.
That was a little overwhelming. Being from a municipality, we're not used to awards or anything. Our awards typically are just seeing people enjoying your parkland and going on trails and enjoying your sports fields. And that's our award. This is great. Thank you. On behalf of the City of Woodstock Parks Department, I'd like to thank the UTRCA for recognizing the efforts of the Parks Department staff and Woodstock City Council for their role in developing a community that fosters good environmental awareness. We've had great success completing our initiatives over the years, working with Brad Hurtner, Karen Winfield, Defoe, and of course, our friends with Ducks Unlimited, with Phil Holes. He's been a gem. He's really helped us out, creating wetlands, and it's really made a difference with it's good that we put storm ponds in, but then you'll take that to the next level and put in another filter bed somewhere and creating this habitat. So it's really been great working with Ducks Unlimited as well. Our next challenge going forward is rehabilitating the old Gulf North lands. We just acquired that this year. So it was an old golf course and it's kind of an extension of Southside Park. So it'll give us, our goal is to get better water quality rating in that area because it's a D. So we can only go up. And of course, it'll be an area for our residents to go out, get active and be healthy. So thank you very much.
Yes, we just thought we'd give a little bit of history or the background for the awards themselves that are being presented. And Michelle has been instrumental in working with the artists to have something a little bit different each year, but I'll let her explain the process.
The artist, her name is Marie Baum, and I'm blanking on exactly where her studio is, but she is in the area. And yes, every year I come to her and say, this is how many awards we need. It's changed a bit over the years. It started with her bringing awards in for me to look at. I would pick a few. This year we've come to the point in our relationship where I say, hey Marie, I need this many. And she said, I've got this idea. There's a few things I want to try. She walked me through it. I said, it's up to you. And so now it's her vision and she's always changing her technique. So every year is unique, every award's unique, just like the recipients. So. Yay.
Okay. I always love this meeting. This is a fun one. Yeah. We took care of the the boring business beforehand. I will share that the budget has been passed, so everybody can go to work and or continue the great work that they do. And now we can recognize some of those that have been through many of the budget processes and have contributed a lot of their careers, if not their whole careers, and maybe some questionably their whole lives to the authority. Yeah, you, Brad, like, it must be good. It's good for aging, because what were you, like 5 when you started? Anyway, we will start. It's all great. The first we'll start with 10 years. We'd like to first recognize Richard Brewer, Land Use Regulations Assistant. Next we have, Sasha is not here to join us today, but Sasha Miskin, Parks Operation Technician for Fanshawe Conservation, is also 10. So congratulations. And we'll go up 5 years to 15 years now. Imitaz Shaw, our Senior Environmental Engineer. Karen Winfield. Tracy Haycock, Mapping and Data Tech. Mary Ellen Kite, Conservation Area Clerk. Sure.
I just want to do a little shout out to Mary Sloan. Is she here today? We're always making sure that I get paid.
So then we do have a 20-year award, which is Brad Hertner, who unfortunately could not be here today. He's a coordinator of community partnerships. So he's not here today, but we'll make sure he gets that award. I don't know if that made it back to management, but so now we'll move on to 35 years. Denia Zano is not with us today in person, but she is online. Oh, I am so sorry. My severe apologies. Community Education Supervisor at Wildwood, thank you so much for your time. And then we have Chris Tasker, the Manager of Water and Information Management, 35 years. Now we'll move to 40 years. And just before I get there, because I'm going to ask these people to say a few words. I think you deserve that after your time here. It's so important, and I'm joking about the length of time, but the value that brings to an organization, and hopefully it speaks to the work-life balance and the work that is done here, to have staff commit their careers to something as important as the work they do here, speaks volume to the person and the organization. This organization is changing. We're starting to lose some of those valuable employees that have been here a long time. Very few people left. That creates challenges, certainly for the organization. But nobody's immortal, and everybody deserves some time with their family and friends. I don't know if I've been in seen another organization that, you get to that 35, 40 years as much as we see here. And extremely proud to be able to present awards like this, because again, it is it is a great organization and it is the people who make the organization. That's why I'm very happy to see that be the central part of, I'm seeing HR not a thing. Having that at the core base of the watershed management strategy, because, you know, we come here for a meeting a month as the board. We pass the budget, but it really, nothing would happen without staff. And having that knowledge passed on and that knowledge be gained over the years is so critical. So I truly want to thank everybody, if it's your first day or if you're at your 40 or beyond. So thank you so much for the dedication to staff, because without you, it does not happen. And with that, I will call up Brad Glassman, please.
I guess I have to say something. I want to thank the Upper Thames Conservation Authority and President Board of Directors, and certainly all the past board of directors. Without you folks, we couldn't do the things we do by any means. Really, in reality, I'd like to defer. Speaking on behalf of that, actually. Again, I just want to thank everybody here. I've been on hundreds and hundreds of farms and properties throughout the watershed, had great opportunities to work with probably thousands of residents throughout the watershed, and I couldn't imagine I've done anything else in my career, in my life. And my next stage, I have a brand new grandchild, first one. That'll be my near future, I guess. Thank you once again.
Teresa Hollingsworth, Manager of Community and Corporate Services.
I would just repeat what Brad has said. I've been extremely lucky to have started here in a co-op placement from the University of Waterloo and decided, wow, this is fantastic. I love this stuff. And again, it really is, it's a team, and it's working with people that you love on things that you care about, and having a board who is so supportive in the face of many challenges. I think I've been through three of these times and over our career, Brad, where the provincial government has said, I don't know about these conservation authorities. We always seem to come out stronger at the other end. So hang in there. So I just want to say thank you very much. And it's really been my blessing. Thank you.
So now we'll go to the next item on the agenda, which is chair's comments. And being a politician, I love to talk. And so now the active audience will be about 3 hours. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. You know, in 2023, when you look back, what I like to do is every board and committee or council I'm on, I like to go back and look and see what's happened in the year review. So I'll take you step by step through that. No, I won't. I'll save you that, because it is a lot. It's truly a lot what's happened in 2023. And really, I think the thing that sums it up was it was a year of learning. Certainly, we had a lot of turnover on the board. There was only 6 returning members. Again, changing the legislation said that, it had to be elected official for the most part. And so we had a lot of changeover, and there was a lot of education that had to be done. We saw a lot of presentations from staff, making sure that we knew how things worked and making sure that we could make probably the best decisions that we could going forward. Staff were learning as well, again, with the different changes in legislation, how are they going to perform these duties? And so I think now we're starting to hopefully calm down on the changes and allow staff to get to be doing. And so I think that's what we'll see in 2024 is go from learning, and it'll be about doing. We certainly see from our project status report, the board has put a lot of work into staff's hands. And so I think this year will be a little bit less work for the board on actually providing work to do and just allowing staff to do that great work that needs to be done by the end of the year, and to make sure that we reach our goals that way. We saw some great presentations earlier on some of that work that needs to be done. That's a big task. It is certainly a big task for those items to be done. I know we have the best staff to do it. I know they're not going to mail it in. It's going to be above and beyond on every single one of those, and that's gonna serve our watershed to the best of the ability, and make it even more of a shining star than it already is. But the board does have to do work. You know, when we were out, Tracy was, and I was able to join Tracy on a lot of presentations. Tracy did a lot of great presenting the business case to our municipalities and having those discussions with those councils. There's always the need for education. You never know, sitting around the board table, we get a glimpse of the work that gets done here and we have more knowledge, but that doesn't mean that our municipal partners do. And so we have a job to do as board members to spread that education and get that message out. Be more partners. There's certainly some challenges that we both face. We're going to start to do some advocacy work, but really there's more of those conversations that need to happen so that we can move forward. Besides Sandy, who was a municipal politician, we are elected officials, and we know the challenges that our municipal partners are facing, but that doesn't change the fact that there's a job to do here. And so hopefully we can work together towards seeing positive changes for the both of us. I do really want to thank Tracy for all the work that she's done. And I know that comes from all of you as well, because as Brad said earlier, it's as you get older, you learn to delegate. And that's the important part. Everybody in this room and everybody else who's not in this room all plays a part in making sure those things get to the board table so we can make decisions. I want to thank, certainly it wasn't a very easy year for Tracy as far as having to go around and do the presentations. A budget that was this big a change need a lot of explanation. And I think that she did a great job of stating the needs of the Conservation Authority at this time to provide that information to our partners. And I think that's seen in over 98% of our watershed signing on to Category 3 agreements to make sure that that great education work and all the other things that Category 3 provides to our municipalities keeps happening. It's been an unstable period. You know, as staff have had to go through a lot since 2019 of constant changes in the act. My hope is that it is begin to stabilize and that we can move forward, whatever that new model looks like that we'll see. I know we're going to be looking at doing a strategic plan. A lot of this information will guide that and provide that new way forward so we can make sure that we can have effects on the future and know where we're going. And I have no doubt that staff will be able to provide that to the board. I certainly want to thank the board members as well. This is my second year as being chair, and I was able to, they were giving me the support to be able to do that again. I came on in 2016, like I said. I'll say this is a big honor for me. Being able to be chair of this organization, there's another like organization like it. So it's pretty amazing to be that. Like I said, we did have a lot of changes in the membership, but I'm extremely proud of each and every single one of the members that came on. You don't know who you're going to get. We got a good bunch of people here that instantly put their feet on the ground and got to work. They learned, and they're an active part of the board. So I want to thank everybody for that. I know everybody's very busy being elected officials. I don't know how London councillors do it. That's beyond me. I don't know how they have time to think, let alone to do all their roles. So I really appreciate you having the time to be an active board member. I also want to thank the returning board members because they stepped up large. They're always willing to offer guidance and training and make sure they're at the table to share their experience with the other board members. So I thank you for that because that could be a hard road to go down. I want to give a special shout out to Sandy, who is our past vice chair. Certainly during the last year, he's allowed me to perform this role at a higher level than I would have. Sandy provides a lot of advice to a lot of people. They should take every advice that they could get from him. His experience, generosity, and giving advice and being there. I've never seen someone who gets the board agenda and like 2 minutes later, Lily has the amount of questions and clarity on it. It's truly a talent, and I will be ever for stepping forward to make sure that there was the leadership there at the board. I certainly want to welcome Dean as our vice chair. I think earlier we saw that in the board meeting that Dean is ready to go, and he is going to be a valuable asset in the position. And I extremely appreciative of him taking the initiative to step up into the position. I know we're all busy, but I don't think we'll have any worries with being in the role, and I look forward to working with him along with staff. So with that, I want to thank everybody for showing up today. I know a lot of you are mandated by work. But don't ever think that the work that you do doesn't have meaning. We look out there today, we had a thunderstorm in February. We're seeing different changes that are happening. The problem is with most of the work that a lot of you do is that it's not seen by the public. We see the education portion, and when we do see the work done in the public, is very much appreciated that we do. When there's a big rain event and there's no flooding, people take that for granted. And so we do get pressures on us to try to change policy and maybe change things the way they were done. But those things are super important. When we don't have buildings collapsing because they weren't allowed to be built in a certain area, those are things that we just don't see because they just didn't happen. So it's very hard to quantify that. But at the end of the day, we all know that there's lives been saved and there's property that's been kept from damage, and people's lives are better for conservation authorities. When you think about, I've been on municipal politics for 8 years now, and I would challenge anybody in this room to think about trying to start an organization with this many municipalities have to sign up for it voluntarily and agree. That took a lot of fortitude and foresight and dedication from those members to do that. And I think we can pay an homage to that for years. What is it, 75 years now? Just over 75 years ago that happened, and we're benefiting from that legacy. So yeah, thank you to those in the past, and see what happens in the future. Thank you. I'll turn it over to our board. Would anybody on our board like to make a comment? No? Over to Tracy.
Okay, so go to the podium where there's the mic. Yes, certainly thank yous. Many of the same comments that Brian expressed earlier, the appreciation and the work that we do is because of people in this room and online and the work that everyone does. So yes, it's been a bit of a challenging budget year per se, but there's always been that recognition of the importance of what we do, and often the appreciation, but then also recognizing this is changing times and the importance of what we do is growing. So really wanted to reiterate that to staff as well. We know that there's lots of changes that have happened. I'm hopeful that we have some stability now and we can get to work and do the work that we want to do. As mentioned with the previous presentation on the watershed strategy and the land strategy, those are important things that will help us in the future. Again, seeking input from all of our staff, from our municipal partners, from our other partners in our Indigenous communities, will help guide us moving forward. So I think, yeah, it's a transition year. It's a bit of a reset year in a number of ways, but great opportunities moving forward. And that's where I would see things. I know we're getting close to lunch, so I'm going to cut it short there, but certainly having the support from staff, having the support from our boards allow us to do this work. And certainly couldn't have done it without the input from Sandy and Brian throughout this past year, because yeah, lots have been happening, and to have that further support and direction has been a great asset for us. Thank you. And I'm just going to let Michelle give a few details about the lunch and how it's set up before we formally adjourn.
Most important part. The food is outside the lunchroom. Anyone with specific dietary needs, vegetarian, gluten-free, vegan, your sandwiches are in the lunchroom. Pop and juice are also inside the lunchroom. And when you're done with your plates, the dirty plates go in the black milk crates, which are in the lunchroom. And oh, sorry, and we're going to be wheeling tables in while you go out to get your lunch. So there'll be a few more tables in here. There's also some seating options in the lunchroom as well.
So if there's no further business, I'll call for adjournment. Eddie and Skylar. All those in favor? Everyone.